Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. I'm your host, Billy Mann, and today on our Facebook Live series, I have the wonderful Philippe Bartu. Philippe, I was actually trying to
Hello.
think when I met you, it was in London. Was it a Clarity, I think, was it the last time we met, was it? An
I
event in
think it was
London,
at
anyway. It
Steve.
was
Yeah, an event in London.
an event in London. So, a quick introduction for Philippe is that I got to know Philippe through Dale, and his story fascinated me because there's at some levels there is a certain parallel between working hard and burning out, where he had the common sense to eventually give up and figure out a new way. It just took me substantially longer to come around to probably the same thing, Philippe. So today I'm honored to introduce everybody to Philippe Bartu. He's living in Switzerland with his family, and we're just going to go from there. Philippe, introduce yourself. Tell the world about your magnificence and what you're up to, and we'll roll from there, my friend. Welcome.
Oh, I just love that accent, Billy. And thanks for having me on. I was trying to imitate your accent, and I just sound Scottish. That's terrible. I don't know how you do it.
Hoots, man. Wrong country.
Whenever I try and put on an Irish accent, I sound Scottish. I don't know what that's about.
Oh,
But
God.
yeah, thanks for having me on. And also, I'm just going to mention this for the people that don't know Billy. Billy has had this amazing hairdressing salon for 28 years that has just closed now during lockdown. He's decided to close the doors and just create a new life, which, yeah, like how exciting is that?
It's a squeaky bum moment, there
Yeah.
isn't along the way, but yeah, certainly the right decision, Philippe. Certainly the right decision.
So, well, let me just say, what would you like to know, Billy? I don't even know where to start.
Philippe, you know what you can do. Just give us, for context,
Okay.
just, a 30-second snapshot of your previous life, what happened, and
Okay.
then where you are. And we'll flow into that then.
Okay.
Just so people have a context of the past and into the present.
Okay. So, very much like what you were saying, when I'm now 41. When I was 28 years old, I had created all the conditions that I thought I needed in order to be happy. I went to hotel school. I studied at hotel school. I was very performance, productivity, achievement. I had really identified with those values as something that was really inherent and important to me. And so I was working in the five-star hotels, always doing my best to grow and to develop a career like any young student. And it was always my dream to have a hotel one day. And I thought I'd start with a restaurant. And so when I was so kind of at some point just so tired and so stressed out working in hotels for a few years that I moved to Lisbon with my Portuguese girlfriend at the time, and we opened a restaurant together. And fast forward the story, like 9 months into opening, I remember feeling very confused, Billy. I just didn't understand. Like, I had created this business that was successful. I had this beautiful girlfriend who really cared for me and loved me, and I loved her. And I had pretty cool friends. But I just felt like it's not like something was missing. It was like I was deeply unsatisfied, but all the boxes were checked.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what to do.
You were textbook successful.
Yeah, like how come? And something you wrote on the post was like he was very successful, but what does success really mean? And so it was a blessing in disguise, although it didn't look like at the time. But I had a heart attack. So for me, the reason to close was really not because, heart attack is actually a very strong word. I wouldn't say that I had a heart attack. It was a close heart attack. It was a grand mal seizure, and it was actually more to do with the brain than the heart. But in any case, I passed out in my restaurant and and I remember the doctor telling me, you have to change. You can't continue like this. And to me, it was the best thing I could hear, because deep down that's all I wanted, but I didn't have the courage to do it. And deep down I had always heard that voice saying, slow down, slow down. But all I was thinking of was, how do I grow? How do I expand? How do I bring in more clients? How do I become more successful? And for the first time, I just really didn't understand what successful was, or I had I wasn't successful. I didn't feel successful, even though I had created all those conditions to be successful. And over time, um, I've come to see just the simplicity of living a successful life, which really means just living in joy and ease and sharing beautiful moments with the people I love. So that's what my life is about today, and about creating conversations with my clients. I'm now working as a coach. It's been over 7 years now, but it took me a lot of transition. And from the moment I closed, there's just a lot of confusion, but good confusion. And very much like this lockdown shakes people out of whatever certainty they have. It was that uncertainty that helped me to put into question and to ask questions that I wasn't asking before. And that was actually a blessing. Like I say, today I'm in any given moment, I'm either enjoying life or I'm making up stories of everything I need to do in order to enjoy life.
Yeah, you're either enjoying it or you're thinking you should be enjoying it. Yeah, it's either one or the other, isn't it? Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And so I'm going into both. But what's I guess fundamentally what's changed is I've just seen that I have access to something that I didn't know I had access to, Billy. Just and one of the things that was just became really obvious to me is the whole time that I was in my whole life, if I look back in all my ups and downs, there was a place inside me that's always been there. But I only really understood that in the last 5 years or so. So what I'm helping people with is to access a space of kindness within each and every one of us, no matter what life throws at you. That space of okayness that has like just the qualities of peace and well-being and resilience. And so last year, I felt like I was kind of in stagnation. And usually that would be like a problem for me, but it was really interesting as the year ended. I just noticed stagnation and just kind of enjoying stagnation. And a bit, if you look at a river, there's just sometimes the river's just stagnant, and that's just natural. And so I was able to kind of just relax into stagnation, and that happened for about 2 or 3 months, and then boom, the coronavirus came. And just before lockdown, I had an insight that what I would really love to do is work with younger people. And well, a week after that, I ended up in lockdown, living, and I was supposed to move to Bali, and that didn't work at all last year, and so I came back to Switzerland.
Yeah, I remember that adventure. I followed that
Yeah, and
adventure.
so after Christmas, I was kind of figuring out where I would do. I was living in Barcelona before, if I would go back, and then basically lockdown happened, which basically decided everything for me. I ended up living with my parents for 2 months in lockdown in the same apartment, and not being able to leave until our place we couldn't move into until April. So for the months of February, March, I was in lockdown with my parents, and overall, like, we survived, and I don't think it was easy for any of us.
Yes.
Like 4 months is a long time, but there were moments where I just wanted to scream. I was like, oh my God. And in those moments, for the first time, I remembered what it was like to be a teenager. I remember what it was like to be living in a place where it's mum and dad's rules at the age of 41.
I was going even now.
Yeah, yeah. And so looking back, even that was a blessing, because today I am working more with teenagers, and actually what I'm creating more is work and conversations with teenagers and young people. And those 2 months were just really helpful for that. It really helped me to just sort of experience what these teenagers are up against. And I'm able just
That's
to,
very interesting, Philippe. What
yeah.
showed up for you?
Well, firstly, this feeling of not being, you're not really independent. You can't just leave. You need your permission. And like, because we were in lockdown, I didn't feel like I could just get away. But what showed up mostly was how much this identity piece about the identity I had around being a son, the identity I had around falling back into people pleasing patterns and doing things in order to be loved and to be the person I want my parents to see. Almost losing myself in that. And it was kind of humorous. Like I remember uh, I borrowed my dad's car and had an accident, and it wasn't a big deal. I just kind of shoved back and boom, we hit, and I was and
Was
it
it a
was
scuffing the toe moment when you had to tell your dad that you're after pranking
like
his car?
it wasn't a big deal. We got out, we took photos, and actually I was kind of surprised it was this like really expensive Audi that I hit, but it was like he didn't have anything, and we just kind of drove off. And then I had just after that, like I had to tell that to my dad, and I noticed, gosh, I'm so afraid to say that. How is he going to react? How can I kind of package it in a nice way? And then I just kind of caught myself out just for being amused at like how I was
Yeah.
making a big deal out of that,
Yeah.
and then just telling him, hey, well, this is what happened, and then he says to me, you know, you he so I just told him this is what happened, and about 2 hours afterwards, I get a phone call from the guy that I hit, and he says to me, oh, well, I went to the garage, and it turns out there's an interior damage. It's going to cost about 3,000 Swiss francs, which is like $3,000. And I was like, oh, shit. And so I said that to my dad, and my dad said to me, you need to step up. You need to man up. You need to tell him, you need to put him back in his place, because you can't trust these garage guys. They're just trying to make money. They're going to rip you off. And so he created like this big story about me needing to man up. You need to tell him that you're not going to pay for anything, and that it's not your fault, and that he's making up, but it's a lie. So I came off like, feeling like, oh yeah, I need to do that. Oh yeah.
You
And
tooled up.
yeah. And it was almost like I lost myself in that, Billy. I
Yeah.
lost myself in being someone who I thought I needed to be just to be lovable for my dad. And how often do we do that as kids, as teenagers? How often?
How often do we continue it?
Yeah.
Because Philippe, you're 41.
Yeah. I know, right?
All right,
It's
so
laughable.
you've 25 years chucked
Yeah.
onto this, and you're still doing it. Why I'm saying this to you, Philippe, is I need a phone call 2 hours ago with a person. Got off that call, and when we spoke the last time we spoke, a lot of relationship issues at the moment. Serious in the sense, when I refer to the word serious, because it is in the sense that a parting is not happening. But when I was having this conversation with her, last week we were speaking about this, and she was giving me all these reasons, and all I kept saying to her is, I don't hear you. Where are you in the middle of all of this? She gave me reasons why she should stay, and she was giving me this reason, and and she was, and I don't want to hurt them, and all of this stuff was coming out, and it was all very wonderful and all very noble.
Yeah.
But she wasn't in the conversation. And I said it to her. I said, where are you here? I don't hear you. What's important to you? Where are you in all of this? You've spoken about everybody else. You've spoken about everything else. And you've given me all the reasons. but there isn't a sound of happiness in any of them for you. And I said, where are you in all of this? And literally we had our call about 2 hours ago and the relationship is over. Because she began to realize, well, actually, the one person I hadn't considered in all of this whole was myself. And she literally spoke about the same things, how she had developed this whole people pleasing and putting herself aside from her mother.
Mm-hmm.
Because her mother was quite a dominant figure. Yeah. And so she spent a lot of her life growing up trying to please her mother. And so had learned to set herself aside.
Yeah.
Totally learned behavior. But she thought it was the right thing to do and right thing to do and right thing to do.
Like an honorable thing.
An honorable thing.
Yeah.
Isn't that just, you knew that this is the second time today I'm having this conversation, which I think that anybody that's listening, and just while we're talking about it, and anybody, I don't usually read the messages out, I just want to say this, but if you want to comment, myself and Philippe will come back to the messages afterwards and we'll reply to them straight on Facebook. But I think it's very, very, you've touched on something, Philippe, that I think is really, really important. And as it were, to thine own self be true.
Yeah. So people that are hearing this, if you're asking yourself, like, like I'm putting myself here as a listener, it'd be kind of like, well, what do you do to kind of get over yourself and stuff? And in the work that I'm doing now with in conversations I'm having with teenagers, it's what do? You do social media, you do video games, you do like this is what we're seeing more and more is how we're using we have different coping strategies when we're kids than we do as adults. Adults, we can maybe look at food and alcohol and sex and other sort of coping strategies. But what it is it's what I got to see was just a very simple misunderstanding that I'm not all that all those emotions, all those behaviors I was having when I was in conversation with my father, all that person I thought I had to be in order to be loved, all that just dropped away. And when it did, at some point, it was just, again, coming back to that place inside me that's just okay. And when it did, it was the most beautiful conversation. I picked up the phone and I called the guy who I hit and I said, you know what? I'm going to sort this out. And so I called the insurance and they said they'll take care of it. It's not even going to affect the premium. Like, no big deal. Just put in the case in the insurance. 5 minutes, pretty much everything was done. Had I not been aware of what was available to me, I would have been in conflict, not only with my dad, with the guy who I smashed into, but most importantly with myself.
Yes.
And then I would be resentful towards everyone, just completely misunderstanding what had happened. And most importantly, I'd be resentful to myself and making myself wrong for not being strong enough, for not being a man enough. And that was just a really simple but powerful experience for me to see and to realize.
It's when, because I have a parallel going on at the moment working with some young men as well. And it's, for me, what I have noticed is that dismantling the misunderstanding of what it means to be a man.
Yeah, I love that.
Dismantling the misunderstanding of it.
Yeah.
This alpha male, dominance, the big fuck on the block, basically,
Were you like that, Billy? When what was Billy Mann like as a teenager?
Very loud.
Yeah.
Very loud. I've never been known as a wallflower, Philippe. Okay. Okay, but at that stage, that was the shield.
Yeah.
That stage, from the traumas of the childhood into the teenage years, that became my shield for people to like me and love me and whatever. You know, on the outside smiling, on the inside crumbling. You know, that mistake. But there's a cohesion now. You know, in the sense that this is a reflection of this, as opposed to a shield. There's a truth to it. But you know, and I said this to you when we were talking earlier on, working with women was the best education I've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because they rounded off all those corners very quickly in me. You know, and when if guys are leading other guys into what it means to, you know, to picking up women and stuff like that, you're in the wrong area. You know, if you really want to know what it's like to connect to women, connect to women. Don't ask other guys. You know what I mean, and all of those things. And out of that, I learned, and I said this to you, they taught me how to feel.
Mm.
They taught me the 11th. Their level of empathy and their level of understanding and their level of connection with each other and their level of networking with each other, Philippe, was so powerful. And it taught me so much.
Yeah,
and I think at a very young age, I think I was fortunate to have that.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, at the times when I was at my lowest ever, around the time I had to break down around 19 and stuff like that, I kind of just had started into hairdressing. And I think I was just lucky that I found something that I really loved doing, really genuinely loved doing. And then I was surrounded by women all day. I just couldn't believe my luck, you know, that, you know, and out of that.
28 years being surrounded by
Yeah, you know, and I have to tell you honestly, the stuff, when I get into the coaching, Philippe, you know, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello, Philippe?
I hear you, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I hear you. Have you lost me? Yeah.
Yeah, all the stuff, Philippe, that I thought was supposed to be happening, or was the right way to do things, that I see that's been sold as a package now, was absolutely not in my experience. For 35 years working side by side with amazing women.
When you say you thought was the right way to do things, what does that mean?
You know, the alpha male thing, you know,
this whole, alpha male thing.
This whole, you know, like your dad saying, fucking don't let him walk all over you, and, you know, stand your ground and push him back. And
the story, you know, that's the thing, when we identify with that, for me, the moment, you know, one of the things he said is, you're too nice and people take advantage of you because you're too nice.
Yes, I'll take that any day.
Yeah, and I was, and for, in that moment when that looked real, it was really, it was, I was stuck. I didn't know what to do with that. Like, what do I have to do now? I have to become, and this reminds me when I was in a retreat with Chip and Jan and Jamie, and kind of at the early stages of my three principles journey. But there was one thing I heard that really landed for me, and it was actually Jamie, that he said, imagine the best version you could possibly imagine of yourself. Imagine how that feels. Imagine what it's like. Imagine, just kind of really feel into it. And he got quiet and he got everyone to kind of really kind of feel into that. And then he said, who you really are pales in comparison to any of that.
Fact.
And you know, that just, I really heard something there. I heard that beneath this whole identity, who I really am needs no self-improvement. And all my life had been about self-improvement. All my life had been about, how do I improve so that I can become successful, so I can feel worthy and lovable and accepted. That was the point in my journey where it went from self-improvement to just like enjoyment, to just joy, and such a feeling of peace and lightness. I had to take the day off and just take a walk and just sit with that. I remember just feeling so profoundly impacted by hearing that. And the interesting thing, I went back and I spoke to everyone and I was like, gosh, wasn't that amazing? And everyone was just like pretty much unimpacted by that. And it's funny how there's just, wisdom shows up when you least expect it. And it showed up so loud, so clear for me then. And I feel like that insight is really something, I'm just living every day. And just the power of hearing something, how that can just be so life-changing.
It's so simple, isn't it? When you're in when the receiver is on.
Yeah, because
when the
before that,
receiver is on, the openness that's there to draw it.
Yeah. And before that, Billy, like I did feel like there was something that needed to be improved. Like there was something that needed to be fixed. There was something that was somehow damaged and broken inside me. A lot of it to do with my divorce and with the heart pain and the breakup I went through in my first marriage, and just it just kind of like just took all that away, just took it all away. And for many people that are sort of in this pandemic today, my
Hello, Philippe.
guess is
Philippe.
they're
Philippe.
also
Philippe.
being faced with.
I just missed you there. You just said,
Oh, okay.
in the people, just at the word pandemic, I lost you. You were about to say
Yeah,
something.
thank you. Yeah, I was just saying, for when we look around today, with all the uncertainty that we have, and one of the things that I'm just noticing is like how this pandemic has really revealed the illusion of certainty, and how the things we thought were certain just ain't so.
You know how I heard that, Philippe? I heard it with a conversation with Dominic Scafidi when he said, we create a life, and then every day we get up and we try to recreate that life.
Mm-hmm.
It just literally, it just cut straight through the noise. It was in the first week of doing all of this. And I began to realize, oh my God, I created life and I have struggled to hold something in place that I didn't really want to hold in place.
Yeah.
For the desire to have a certainty.
Yeah.
Every day.
And in your case, it was feeling like certainty was what would give you a sense of well-being and security.
But it was grinding me. It was the irony is, and I would describe this my own clients. The more separate we are on the inside, when things are in alignment, there is no suffering. It's when we're out of alignment within ourselves, when we think we're supposed to be doing this and we're supposed to be grinding our gears, and this is, if I hold on to this is for sure and certain. But I was dying on the inside, Philippe.
Yeah.
I was dying on the inside. Despite all of this work, I hadn't quite whatever vestiges of not having faith and trust in just fell away.
Yeah.
Just fell away. That's the way I can describe it,
Mm-hmm.
And things just went like that. And I just knew.
Yeah.
There was no struggle. The struggle was over.
Yeah.
I just knew whatever this is unfolding, whatever is coming through me right now, must be allowed breathe.
Yeah. What a gift. What a gift to have seen that. Yeah.
And it just made and literally everything has fallen into alignment since then.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people may hear that and think, gosh, Billy was really courageous. Did it feel like courage to you at the time?
It's just logical.
Yeah, it's just logical, right? Because like that's what I love about this. It's just I'll give you an example. I've just come back from Italy, and I
Mm.
had the most wonderful, just a week camping holiday, and with my wife, and it was a pleasure holiday. For me, but when I go to Italy, I kind of just I really enjoy. And what I mean by that is I love food. I just love eating, and Italian
Me
food is
too.
just
It's the best.
the gelati, the pizzas, the cappuccinos. Like I just let loose and just really, really enjoyed it. And I came home, and actually on the last day I called a friend. It was a 40th birthday, and it's a good friend of mine. Her name is Julia, and I was blown away. Like she looked 10 years younger. I never heard her sound so amazing. And I asked her, Julia, like, what's happened to you? You've transformed. She said, yeah, I've just been on a 21-day water fast. And I thought, what? She only drank water for 21 days. And here's me, I'm just like, enjoyed,
Yeah,
and
the
my
doors literally
gelato.
coming
Yeah.
out your ears.
And then she said something that really impacted me because I was all about the joy of eating. And she says, I've lost weight and everything, and all that is great. But beneath all of that, I've discovered the joy of not eating. And I realized in that moment that I had innocently outsourced my well being, my happiness, my joy to the good food I was having.
Wow.
So it seemed to me moving to water would be like a punishment and would be really hard work.
Yeah,
And
logically.
and so the logic I had built is food makes me happy, no food makes me unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about it was logical, when I saw that, I just got curious about it. And then I came home the next day and I was walking up the stairs and I kind of noticed I was kind of pulling more weight up, noticing my body was a little heavier than before I left.
That's all to do.
Then kind of just feeling the extra weight and remembering and just noticing all the food cravings I had and how much I wanted to continue eating like that. And I realized that I had I had forgotten that food doesn't bring me joy. I had forgotten. I didn't see it. And so my wife and we just, actually it was my idea. I said, I just want to, I'm not like the idea of doing a 21-day water fast was like completely mental. So I would just do like a detox. And so the first day, I just started eating less. I just had one meal a day and did that for like 7 days. And then we moved to just juicing and then just been juicing. And I'm now in day 12. The last 5 days, I haven't had a single meal. All I've had is just 2 glasses of juice a day and water. That's all I've had in 5 days. And I'm starting to experience the joy of not eating. Not just that, but the joy of knowing that there's joy beyond not eating. And it's not a punishment. And if I were to tell myself I'd be doing that, I'd be like, oh, poor me, that must be really hard. And actually, I've never felt this way in my body since I was in my 20s. I feel like I want to move. I want to do more. I feel just more energy. And this morning, I was like, I woke up at 6:30 and played tennis with my wife for an hour. We finished, and after that, usually she'd be like exhausted, and she says, "Oh, let's go for a run," which is very, very unusual. Like usually after an hour of tennis, like I'm happy to like
Yeah, sit
take a
down.
break, and just the what amazes me in all this is like how much um my cravings for coffee have gone. Like before, I'd wake up in the morning, Billy. The only thing I was thinking was coffee. Like I wanted to get my hit of
Tea.
caffeine.
Mm.
In the afternoon, like I want my cup of coffee, and it was like a socially accepted addiction, but still, in a way, I, even though addiction is a strong word, it was like I was really looking forward to that hit, and that's just gone now. It's just gone. It's just dropped away. It's there's no. I'm not feeling like I'm missing out on anything, and I'm just taking it one day at a time. You know,
I
just
think you've just tipped on something that is very, very important, Philippe. You know, and I know it's the old FOMO thing, you know, fear
hmm
of missing out. You know,
yeah,
it's often hackneyed as a hot button for selling products and stuff.
yeah,
But in its real intangible sense,
hmm
you know, for a real impact in life,
yeah,
is to see through that particular misunderstanding, the fear of missing out. Oh my God, if I miss
yeah,
this, my life is ruined. If I miss this, I'm somehow empty. If I miss this, I'm
yeah,
going to be, you know,
yeah,
that is really powerful. Like,
yeah.
because I'm here and
Gosh,
my
yeah,
wheels are thinking because I'm a foodie, or so I tell myself, you know. Okay, signs on, you know what I'm trying to say to you. This is not so much a thick beard as much as it's hiding the second chin. You know what I mean? I'm shrubbing around it, you know. You know. But you know, but I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, that is incredible. Because my initial thought was, oh fuck, 21 days without food. You know what I mean? I was here smiling benignly at you, but on the inside, like I was heading for the door. You know what I mean?
yeah,
You know. But then
yeah,
it's right. It's the fear of missing out.
yeah. And also, I thought, oh well, this is going to impact my social life. Like, how can I go? I can't go and meet people if they're going to have a meal because I can't just be there with my glass of water and my juice, and they're like tucking in to like uh, beautiful risotto or something, and I'm like, whoa, I want some of that. And actually, that too was just like, well, I'm not free if that's how I like. If that's true, then I'm not free. There's so much freedom in just being able to have lunch with someone and just being totally okay with just having a juice. Now, I don't know if I'm there yet, and I don't know what my response will be like because right now it's been just my wife and I. But what you say about FOMO was definitely something that created a barrier to me doing
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Because I gave up the cigarettes, Philippe, 3 months after my daughter was born. And now I had reduced the amount of cigarettes I was smoking. But in my heyday, at the height of my smoking, I was smoking 3 packs a day. I was a very heavy smoker.
Oh wow.
And I was lighting one, and literally I was almost chain smoking.
Yeah.
Because when I was teaching hairdressing and stuff at the time, everybody smoked indoors, you know, and I had a whole floor to myself because I was teaching students how to cut hair, and the kids, the student staff room
Mm.
was on my floor. So by my desk, they were drawing me coffee and cigarettes all day. So I was drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes all day while I was working. And I remember my daughter was 3 months old, and we had an agreement. Myself and my wife had an agreement that we would, when children would arrive into the house, my wife was a nurse, she's a total non-smoker, that there would be no smoking in the house. So I agreed to that. I said, okay, if babies arrive and when they arrive, there'll be no smoking in the house. 100%. Totally in agreement with that. So 3 months after Roisin was born and Kira's feeding her, and I always, the image is always so Dickensian, you know. I'm standing outside the back, my patio door outside the back of the house, and it's milling out of the heavens now. It's pissing rain. You know, I had to have my cigarette after supper, and my wife is feeding my daughter inside the window. And the golden light is streaming out the window, and my wife, you know, the picture of happiness feeding the child, and I'm standing outside the window like a drowned rat smoking my cigarette.
Yeah.
And I kind of went, what the fuck am I doing here?
Yeah.
Like, that's where I want to be, not out here.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I just give up the cigarettes. But what struck me about it was, and it's exactly, and I hadn't seen it in the context of this until you brought up the conversation with Philippe, was that when people asked me afterwards, about the smoking and whatever, I said, well, it's funny, I feel free now, I said.
Yeah.
Because when I was traveling, I was always making sure, that
Yeah.
I could line myself up with my travel with smoking. And, if I found my habit when I was driving the car, I had places I used to smoke or things that I used to, and there was such a structure around my smoking, where I smoked, the habits of smoking and all of it. And it all just fell away because I felt, oh my God, I don't have those habits anymore. I feel free to travel. I feel free to do whatever I want. I don't have to arrive at somebody's house and wonder whether or not I can smoke in the house. Do I have to go outside? And all these questions just they disappeared because they were no longer important.
Yeah.
So my head wasn't full of the thinking. And I remember saying to somebody, I'm free to travel. I'm just free
Yeah.
now. I don't have to worry
Yeah.
about these things anymore. And until such time as you had brought the context, you brought it into the context of what you're saying yourself. I went, well, that's literally why I gave up cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
That was showed up after I gave up cigarettes was I just got free of them.
Yeah.
I just got free to do whatever I wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what I'm hearing as well is you saw that cigarettes weren't a requirement for you to access a busy mind, or like, or more quietness, or for you, like, cigarettes wasn't the thing that you needed. What you needed was connection with your family. And actually, cigarettes were just taking you away from that.
Correct. That's it. It was almost
Yeah.
Dickensian,
Yeah.
standing outside the window in the rain and in the late dusk, and the golden light streaming out the window, and I was going, really,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is just not right.
Yeah.
And it was the shift. It just literally it shifted. I just kept smoking. Now for a little bit afterwards, I'll confess, when I'd have a few beers, the habit would. And saying that, I knew there would come a moment shortly afterwards. I actually knew that there would come a moment where I'd stop smoking. And I had been out with my staff on it celebrating a birthday party, and we were on the beer. And at this stage, smoking areas had showed up at the back of pubs and stuff like that. You couldn't smoke indoors or whatever. And I remember they were all outside and they were having fun. And I was chatting to one of the lads in the bar, and I missed my lads, and I went out to them. And one of them handed me a cigarette, and I took a pull of it, and I just went,
Really. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was it. Just hit me in that instant. Can't be doing that anymore.
Yeah.
And it just shifted all by
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah. And it took no hard work from your side. It was just, you saw something, and it was like, you saw what was logical and what no longer made sense.
And I'm curious to know now how that logic is going to play out this food thing, because it's something that I'm beginning to
Yeah.
look at now that I'm home quite a bit more,
Yeah.
I'm working from home. I have
Yeah. Like,
actually reduced capacity for eating food. I have,
yeah.
where I was always eating guaranteed 3, maybe 4 meals a day,
Yeah.
I'm eating 2 now.
Wow. Yeah.
Eating 2, and the habit of this bit of a snack and a cup of tea at night. I was sitting down, and even now I'm making. My wife said it to me during the evening. She says, "Really,
Mm-hmm.
is that important?"
Yeah.
I can.
Yeah. Well, I'm feeling like this is transforming my relationship with food
I imagine
in a
it is.
way that before it would be very much about, I would have moments where I would just kind of be a little carefree and just enjoy and put on a bit of weight, and then I would kind of like do some kind of hold back a little bit more, and then so it was a bit like this.
Yes.
But that isn't really freeing, because you're either surrendering into the idea that food is giving you pleasure, or you're holding back and denying yourself the pleasure of food in order to stay healthy and not put on weight. And now what I'm hoping, Billy, from this is just to be more like, just
It's
much
not an
more
either
space.
or
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah, yeah, and that it's like the appetite for just clean, healthy food um, becomes greater than, stuff that I love to eat that just isn't so healthy for me.
Isn't that very interesting?
Yeah.
Isn't that very interesting? The less you've been consuming, we'll say,
Yeah.
of what you say,
Yeah.
of what we, that your body is now starting to tell you something different.
Yeah. And your body, and I did a permaculture class in Guatemala last year, and I really loved one of the things I heard in that class. It was the definition of permaculture. They gave us 5 definitions, but I only remember one, which I really loved. It said permaculture is nature remembering itself. Actually, it says we are nature remembering. We are nature remembering. And what that did for me was just to live more in tune with nature. And I kind of missed the mark on food. And now I feel like I've just been eating clean, fresh fruits and vegetables for the last 12 days, nothing else. And I feel like I am nature remembering.
That is really just that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's it. That's how wisdom shows up. That's how it just shows up in our lives. No separation. It just feels in alignment, however it decides to show up.
Mm.
The openness to it, Philippe. You asked me earlier on, about the closing of the salon. I said, well, that's when, it showed up. It was logical. There wasn't a huge fanfare. It just made sense to do it.
Yeah.
And the openness to hearing that, that's all you had to do was listen.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way that's shown up, Philip.
You love what?
I love the way that's showing up, a return to
Yeah.
nature.
Yeah. Yeah.
That you're listening to both the ideal of living, the sustainability of all of this, but how your body is directing you to
Mm-hmm.
wisdom that's showing up in your body to direct you towards eating
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
healthy sustenance for which the body does ultimately require. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's not about eating food for pleasure, as in, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
food makes me happy.
Yeah. Yeah. But the power of no food makes me happy too.
You see,
And just knowing that that's available.
it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's from the human sense, it makes no sense. From the human element of it, you're supposed to be eating all the
Yeah.
time, and food is such play. I'm a foodie, with that. Well, actually, no,
Yeah.
that's not really true either.
Yeah. It's just another label you've put on yourself. And it's not even about, food makes me happy or no food makes me happy. It's just like happiness exists regardless of how much food you can eat.
And this
The
goes back. This
Yeah.
goes back to what you started on, and which I completely subscribe to, because it forms a cornerstone of my own coaching. Is when people will talk about purpose, finding your purpose. But
Hmm.
actually, your purpose is the purpose of joy, to live from
Yes.
joy, to live from happiness, because everything else is a byproduct of that.
Right.
It's not the joy and happiness are a byproduct of what you do. It's the
Hmm.
other way around. It becomes an expression of
Yeah.
joy and happiness.
Yeah. I had to change my whole website after that insight I had from that retreat when I heard that. Um, I was the purpose coach before discovering the principles. So what you say is very true. But you know what? There was something about it that always felt a little superficial and off. But it was just the best tools I knew. It was the best thing I had access to. And that was like a slap in the face. Like, purpose is only a story we create that creates an identity about who we are and what we're here to do. But beyond all of that, we're just here to expand in joy and happiness.
Totally,
Yeah,
totally. And just maybe to add it on to that, when it felt off for you,
yeah,
like you were
yeah,
saying, well, that's all of us.
yeah,
This is the clean food conversation.
yeah,
Is sitting there, my happiness comes from like these amazing tomatoes the Italians have.
yeah,
So every time I think of Italy, I think of tomatoes. It's no wonder they have tomatoes and everything, because their tomatoes are so beautiful. Or so it appears, and the food is so succulent, and I get that. I love Italian food. But that's okay, because, it's seeing something new and understanding something new and seeing something deeper within yourself has never made your past life wrong. It was just what you understood to be true in
that's
that
right.
moment. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all it is.
And when we can see that, there's like a sense of just self-compassion, and there's no blame or shame or judgment or beating ourselves up.
No.
There's just a sense of gratitude for where we are now, looking back.
Yeah. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
That is, and I suppose that is presence in a nutshell. It's presence in a nutshell.
Well, yeah.
Philippe,
Beautiful.
I'm conscious of the time, and I think I don't know where. I think I'm happy here.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful place to complete it.
I think this is a beautiful place to finish the conversation. Philippe, I know I put a tag up for you on the post this morning, but if people want to source you out and want to have a conversation about any of the stuff that showed up today, where would they locate you?
Well, if they're seeing this on Facebook, the best thing is just to write me a private message on Facebook. And right now, I'm creating a well-being and resilience training program for teenagers, which is sort of in the making of. And I'm looking to create conversations with teenagers and parents, specifically that have issues around social media usage and gaming, and difficult behaviors. So if you're listening to this, I'd love to hear from you, because I just love to be more in conversations with teenagers and parents who are experiencing this.
That's beautiful. The word is out now, Philippe, and whatever we can do, buddy, I'm delighted, and I would support you any way I can.
Beautiful.
I'm delighted to that. Now, I want you to hold on a sec. For everybody else, thank you all so much for joining us. For those of you that will come on to this later on, I do hope you will find it as inspiring as I have to have spent the last hour with Philippe, taking a meander through wisdom, Philippe. Because, we've started from purpose and talked about love and talked about the joy of living and clean living and the openness to seeing something new all the time. I think that is just perfect. It leads to the wonderful expression of presence, to be available to hearing what's new and fresh within ourselves all the time.
Beautiful.
Philippe, thank you so much for joining me. To everybody else, thank you all, and look forward to seeing you all soon. Bye
Thank you
for now.
so much, Billy, and everyone who's joined us today. Thank you.